My name's Greg Mayo. I'm the men's healing strategist here at Support After Abortion. And yeah, I do want to talk about this for a minute. For me, I had my first abortion experience at 18 and then again at 22. And I didn't enter healing until I was 39. Now, let me talk about a window here. See, I became a dad at 29. And so, what I want you to see here is that there was a decade of me being a father before I entered healing. So, how did that impact my parenting? I wasn't aware of it. Let's start there. But the thing is, if you look at the screen here and some of the options we have up here, unrealistic expectations. See, somewhere I knew I didn't protect my children. I didn't save my children when I was younger. And so I had to be a perfect dad. And we see that on here too, seeking perfection. I had to be the ultimate dad. Nothing could go wrong. I had to do everything right. The problem is, as it says on the screen here, I lack confidence. No matter what I did, I wasn't good enough in my mind. And I would never be good enough because, again, somewhere I knew I didn't protect my children. And I became overprotective of the children I had. I used to joke about helicopter parents, and then I became one. So that was kind of terrific, right? The way that worked out. But I didn't feel like I deserved to be a dad. Why? Because I didn't protect the children I had, and I hadn't healed from that wound, that pain, that grief, that shame. None of that. I carried that right into the first decade of parenting. The other thing is, and after I got into abortion healing, I got in touch with the fact that I had high functioning anxiety. I remember talking to the therapist and saying, well, everybody doesn't act like that. Like, I just thought it was normal. Turns out it's not. And so, how did that all change? With all that background, healing made the difference. Healing from the abortion wounds that happened long before I met my wife made a huge difference in how I parented. See, as I started learning and healing and growing and validating in myself the pain that I experienced and the shame and the guilt and all that, it started changing how I parented. I became an intentional parent. And we're going to talk through some of this today, Amanda, but I just wanted to give a little bit of background because I talk to guys all over the country and I have for years, and all of them have some version of this story, how it affected the way they parented. The good news is, and the bow tie I'm going to put on this thing before I throw it back to you, Amanda, is that healing can also impact how you parent. And that's what we're going for here, right? How do we help people heal so they can be the best version of themselves and change generational trauma into generational healing?
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing your experience. I know that a lot of people can identify with what you shared, and I can also identify with that. We have a video from another person who experienced abortion a little bit different than what you mentioned. So it's just a great way for us to hear from another perspective. So if you would share Carolyn's story.
Yep, let's take a watch.
About 2.5 years after my abortion, I was again faced with this unexpected pregnancy. And I remember thinking, I'll just have another abortion. I went to my boyfriend, now husband, and I said, I'm pregnant. And I was bracing for the worst. I was bracing for what I'd already experienced. He looks at me and goes, okay, well, I guess we're going to have a baby. And I was floored. I just started bawling. And there was so much relief in knowing that I didn't have to go through that again. So fast forward a few months into my pregnancy, I remember thinking, everyone talks about how great it is to be pregnant and how they just really connect with their baby as a mom and carrying your child. And I never quite got that. I was always like, yeah, I feel him and it's neat and whatever, but I never really enjoyed my pregnancy. Looking back, wow, I was so disconnected from this pregnancy, a pregnancy that ultimately we chose and were excited for eventually once you get over the shock. And I couldn't even really get excited, and I didn't know why. So then 9 months later, we're at the hospital and I'm delivering my son. This is about 3 years after my abortion. I remember when he was born and they hand him to my husband when he goes, oh, give him to his mom. And it was just complete and utter. Like I just said, no. I said, I can't. You hold him. Let everyone else hold him. I don't want to hold him right now. Who doesn't want to hold their firstborn child? I couldn't understand why I was feeling that way. What was going on? This was supposed to be the most exciting day of my life. That's what everybody says. And yes, it was exciting and I loved my son, but it was also one of the saddest because it was the first time that I fully faced my abortion decision 3 years prior. All that running, all that shoving down of feelings, when I had to look into the face of my child for the first time, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. For me, that was really hard to enjoy the day that he was born. Even once I took him home, there was a disconnect. There was I don't feel like I should even really deserve this. I don't deserve to have a child. Look what I threw away. And now I'm here and I have to take care of this child. Why do I deserve this? I shouldn't be happy. I shouldn't feel this way. And I didn't know what it was in those moments, but it caused a distance between me and my children. Because not only was it like that when my son was born, there was also a disconnect when my daughter was born 2 years later, and then when my third child was born 5 years later. And each time it was exciting to be having another baby. I love my children. I really want you to hear that. But every time they were born, there was a sadness. There was this underlying guilt and shame and anger and just pain.
Such a hard story to hear, but it is so important for us to hear that there are some similar threads, the feelings that we talked about, that we've shared, that you've shared, and that we hear other clients talk about, but it can affect parenting in different ways. Like you said, Greg, you were overprotective, and we see here that Carolyn really struggled to bond with her children and to feel connected with her children because of her abortion experience. The other thing that really struck me while I was listening to it and listening to you talk is that we don't see clearly how it's affecting us until we get healing. So, we're going through our day to day and parenting our children. And so we might be hearing clients say, oh, it doesn't affect me. I'm fine. Wasn't that true for you, Greg, that you weren't really able to see how much it was affecting you until you got healing? And then you could look back and see, wow, this was really a thread throughout all of my years of parenting up until this point.
Yeah, 100%. My dad used to always say, you don't know how dirty you are till you hose off. And it was the same kind of thing because, as I've explained before in other settings, up until then, I was playing life on defense. I wasn't intentional. I was just reacting to what happened around me, and I was reacting out of my woundedness, out of my pain. So there was never time to be conscious, right? It was just jumping from the next thing to the next, sort of playing emotional whack-a-mole with my life. Healing and starting a healing journey and walking a healing journey requires a level of intentionality that makes playing life on defense really hard. So yeah, once you get down that path a little bit and you look back at what you were, it's encouraging, right? Hey, look, I've made progress, I've changed. But also there's a period in there where it's a little saddening. Like, wow, look at all that time I spent and I wasn't even aware of it.
Absolutely. And I experienced some of that as well. As far as my story goes, I became pregnant at the very young age of 14 years old. And everyone around me, my family, my mom, my friends were telling me, you can't be a mom. There's no way that you can be a mom. You're too young to be a mom. You wouldn't be a good mom. I was even discouraged and told that if I did give birth to this child, that I wouldn't have any rights over my child because my mom would be the one who was raising it. So I wouldn't really have any say-so in its life. And so I went through with the abortion. And the way that it immediately affected me was just this feeling that I was going to be punished, that I was never going to be able to have kids. And even at that young of an age, I knew I wanted to be a mom. And so that was heartbreaking for me, that thought that I don't think I'll ever be able to have children. And so fast forward 5 years later, I was 19 and I was pregnant again. And I still didn't fully feel ready to be a mom, but I felt that I had gotten a second chance. And I also knew that I could never go through another abortion. It was extremely traumatic for me personally. So I had my son when I was 20 years old. And that feeling that I was going to be punished, or maybe that I should be punished, kind of carried into his early days, because he was a really hard baby. He was colicky, he had stomach issues, he cried constantly. And I felt like I had to be the only person to care for him, to be up through the middle of the night with him, to carry him with me everywhere, even to the bathroom. I wouldn't set him down. I just had this sense that it was something that I had to do and nobody else could do it. It was also that feeling that I'd been told that I couldn't be a mom, that I wouldn't be a good mom, right? So I had to prove to myself and to everyone else around me that I could be a good mom. I got married. I had my second child, and it was a boy. And here comes that I'm going to be punished feeling again. Oh, this is it. I'm never going to be able to have a daughter because of what I did to my daughter. And that was the way I thought I was going to be punished. I had my third child, and she was a little girl. And that was a huge deal for me, feeling that I, again, had gotten this chance to be a mom of a baby girl. But I had this sense of dread and anxiety that something horrible was going to happen to her, that she was going to be taken away from me. Then I had a fourth child. And looking back, what I can see is this enormous amount of pressure that I put on myself, I also put onto my children. And they were the reflection of me, right? How else can I prove that I'm a good mom if my kids aren't also being good kids? So I put an extra amount of pressure on my children, and that would come out in anxiety and outbursts of anger towards my children. It wasn't until 20 years after my abortion that I finally got healing. At that point, my kids were 14, 12, 10, and 8. So that's 14 years of parenting from this place of anxiety and shame and fear and anger. That's why it's so, so important for us to connect clients to healing sooner rather than later. It's important for everyone to get healing. So if it's 20 years later, it's still important. We can see how it's affecting not only the parent, but the children. It affects everyone around them when these experiences go unhealed. But it's so very important to find ways to bring those clients into healing during those childbearing years, during those years when their children are still really small. One way that we can do this is through what I like to call the relationship funnel. If you guys have heard me talk before, you've probably heard me say that life change happens in the context of relationships. Relationships are so important, and we can utilize the tools that we already have available in order to build those relationships that are going to bring clients into healing. When I was the director of a pregnancy resource center, and I know every center is a little bit different, but my center, we could only give resources to clients every 3 months. And so the most I was ever seeing a client was every 3 months. And it was impossible to build a relationship with a client in that amount of time, unless they were involved in our Bright Course classes. One way to bring a client into relationship is to market your Bright Course or your parenting classes. I realize not everyone has Bright Course, but these are ways that we're going to have more touch points with these clients and enable us to build a relationship. We can do that by inviting everyone, every single client, tell them how great it is, talk about the incentives, talk about having support and community, because those are things that a lot of our clients are lacking, just having a support person in their lives. And through Bright Course and seeing them every week, you can be that person for them and build that relationship. So rather than just sticking them in the room, letting them watch the video, coming back in, asking them the questions, assigning their homework, and sending them on their way, you can use this time to ask them questions about their personal life, about the things that they might be struggling with, get to know them a little bit better, and build that relationship so they start opening up about some of these other issues and struggles that they're having in life. And then once they kind of open up with those struggles and issues that they might be dealing with, you can offer deeper topics that are related to their struggles. For instance, on Bright Course, the way that I learned about support after abortion was through Unraveled Roots, because it was one of my favorite programs to utilize for this very reason, that it gets under the surface. It's designed to get to the roots of those damaging behaviors. So it's a great choice to go to bringing it into a deeper topic. There's some other great ones on there too. I know there's a newer one about trauma. There's also parenting without shame. So there are a lot of good options on there that are going to get you under the surface and into those deeper topics and starting that road to healing. And then at that point, after you've built that relationship, you've gone deeper with them, you can circle back to abortion healing. You know, that client that maybe at their intake indicated they'd experienced abortion and said, oh, well, I'm fine, or I don't really want to talk about it. I don't need any help with that. Now you've gotten this foundation of relationship and trust built, so you can bring it back up and circle back and offer to go through Keys to Hope and Healing with that client. I suggest Keys to Hope and Healing because it's on Bright Course, and also because it's an introduction to healing, and it's just a great place to start for abortion healing. And then you can offer next steps after they've gone through Keys to Hope and Healing, whether that is a deeper spiritual curriculum that you offer, a retreat, referring them to a clinician. Just have options, and then let the client decide what their next step on their path to healing is going to be. And by doing all of this and bringing these clients into healing, we're going to start to see generational patterns being broken. We're going to see healthier parents, which makes healthier children and healthier communities. And I know at our hearts, that's what we all want to see, right? And then we have our panelists who are also going to share some ideas and personal experiences and some of the ways that they've been able to integrate healing into their services. So I am so excited to have them here. And I would love for Marley, Trione, Susan, and Rhonda, if you guys would just come on and introduce yourselves quickly and just let us know your name, what center you're from, and your position there. And then we can get into asking you guys some questions and learning from you.
Well, hi, I'm Rhonda. I am the Center Director at CareNet Pregnancy Services in Northern Kentucky.
Thank you, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
I'm Trione, and I'm the Center Director for the past 30 years at Real Choices Women's Center in Nevada. And I've been Abortion Recovery Director for about 20 years. And I'm the Executive Director and Chapter Leader of Deeper Still Retreats for Northern Nevada.
Amazing, Trione. I'm so glad to have you here.
And I'm Susan. I'm at Care Pregnancy Center in Louisiana. I've been here since I came as a volunteer in 2001, but I've been doing the abortion recovery stuff since 2006. And I've been the office manager here since about 2007. I love being here. Every year I'm surprised I'm still here. God hasn't told me to do something else.
Thank you. And Marley, could you come on and introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Marley. I am located in South Carolina with Foothills Care Center. I've had a relationship with them for over 20 years. I was the director previously, and I came back about a year ago to begin the recovery program. I'm the recovery care coordinator now.
Great. Thank you guys so much for being here. We are going to focus these questions for our panelists that we have invited, but we will also have a time for more discussion and questions and answers after we have gotten a chance to hear from our panelists. I know that we have some different questions for different ones of you guys today. For those of you that have had your own personal abortion experiences, would you guys be willing to share how that affected your parenting? And for that question, we're going to start with Rhonda.
So just hearing your story and Greg's story, it's a lot similar to mine. I was 16 when I experienced my first pregnancy and abortion. And then 6 years later, 22, got pregnant with my son, and I knew I wasn't going to go down that road again. But every month of my pregnancy, I replay, oh, is this how it would have felt? I embraced the pregnancy, but I still hung on to my abortion experience and what I would have missed out on. I'll never forget giving birth to him. I couldn't get him in my arms fast enough. I clung on to him. I was so thankful that I was even given a chance to get pregnant again, because I went through 6 years of being very promiscuous and drinking and just living a not godly life, just kind of drowning my abortion experience. So to be able to have him just blew my mind. And so I parented very close. I didn't cut the cord, so to say, became very OCD about everything. And even though I loved him and adored him, I developed anger and would control how he would play with his toys. And then when he was done with his toys, just instead of letting them sit there, I had to put everything up, followed him around everywhere, was so afraid to let him out of my sight. And even to let him stay with my parents was very hard for me to do. And I never felt like he could do anything on his own, that I had to do it all for him. It was more detrimental to myself too, because I really didn't know how to let him just be a little boy and to experience life, because I was so afraid of what could happen to him, or am I being a good mom, and to make sure that I don't fail as being a mom for him, and to just, I feel like, make up for everything that I didn't do. I didn't step up. I didn't become a parent when I should have at 16. So I had to make up for all of that with my son. And then I had my second child, my daughter, when I was 26. I almost lost her twice. I had placenta previa. It wasn't until years later that I found that was due to damage from the abortion. So it was a little bit different of an experience with her. I kind of wasn't so clingy to her, but I still, it seemed like with that pregnancy, or when she was growing, I couldn't let her out of my sight either. And I just parented so closely, and I controlled everything. Like, the control part for me was huge, and the OCD. That's something that I carried with me until I went through the healing. And then when I went through healing, I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder I was the way I was.
Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing. You hear similar threads throughout all of our stories, and it's really interesting to hear that. Susan, would you be willing to share a little bit with us about how abortion affected your parenting?
Sure. So I became pregnant at 18 and chose abortion for a lot of really, well, it was just a terrible decision. I had no idea how much it changed me until I was in a healing program. At that time, we had two boys, 10 and 7. And y'all's stories are very similar. Greg, yours especially, just I'd had all this years of parenting, never really made a connection. But looking back then, once I began to heal, I saw that I just felt like I had to produce perfect children. I just had to show the world that it's okay that I'm a parent. I made a terrible decision, but now I can be a parent because I can produce these perfect children. And I just got to tell you, my children were so happy when I got some healing, because mom just gave them a break. I really was able to back off a little and let them be who they are.
I'm curious, Susan, on that. Did you tell your kids you were entering healing, or did they start noticing a difference and then you said, hey, this is how we got here?
Actually, about a year after I did that program, I shared with them. I'd prayed about it for a long time because I knew that I was going to be sharing publicly that story, and I was not going to share that without their knowledge beforehand. So I shared that with them. They were 11 and 8, and I was very surprised at their reactions. I felt like at the time that God said, yes, tell them. Now I'm pretty sure I shared with them that I realized how much I had expected of them. I just know now as adults, they will tell you, yeah, it was good for mom because it was good for them.
So they saw a change in you, and then you made
Absolutely.
amends, and that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, I just didn't demand perfection from them. It's really okay if they're just people. But after abortion, you just, at least for me, I did feel like I had to produce these perfect children. and just prove that it's okay that I'm a parent, I'm okay. And that's just not healthy.
No,
So
but you found the healthy path, and
I
I think that's
did.
great. I love that.
I did.
So another question, and you talked a little bit about this, Susan, but for both of you, talk about going through after abortion healing and it changing the way you parented. But talk a little deeper about how it changed your parenting style and maybe some of the outcomes, some of the interactions with your kids.
Probably one of the biggest things, and I heard this when Rhonda was sharing, there was a fear that was underneath all that too. There was a fear that God was going to snatch those children away from me because I wasn't doing a good job. I didn't deserve to have children because of what I'd done. Being able to deal with that and just understand the truth and apply that and accept it, doing away with that fear changed the way I was just able to let them do things without having to oversee every move. I was able to let them fail, which is probably one of the best things our kids can do is just fail while they're under our roof. Yeah, that's probably the best thing was just being able to get rid of that fear.
I love that and can totally relate. Rhonda?
So I didn't enter into the abortion healing until my son was 15 and my daughter was 11. It was like 2006, I gave my life to the Lord, and then the devil wanted to remind me of my abortion. I'll never forget it. It was summer, and I was just spending some alone time with the Lord, and the devil was like, "Oh, remember what you did when you were 16?" But at that point, I said, "Lord, what do you want me to do with that?" And he said, "You gave up a life, go save one." I'd been seeing signs and people coming into work that volunteered at CareNet, and so the lady didn't know my story, but she said, "I feel like you need to call them." So after a few months, and then when I heard that, what the Lord had said, I reached out and I told him I'd had an abortion and I really want healing. And so going through that process, I was ready to share my story, but I was still hesitant. And I started volunteering at CareNet. And then they asked me to start speaking at a Catholic school for their juniors and seniors. But before I did that, I wanted to sit my children down and share what I did. Before anybody else would hear, I wanted my kids to know. And I guess I was expecting them to, how could you do such a thing? So on and so forth. But really, it was my son that was like, "So I have a sister in heaven." And I said, "Yeah, you do." He's, "That's so cool. I'm going to get to meet her one day." I haven't shared that in a long time. But I literally felt this boulder that I had been carrying around just break and just fall off of me. And the relationship I had with my kids we had a great relationship, but I just felt like it got stronger and I could let them grow as individuals and start to experience their own life. And they started to see a happier mom because I wasn't carrying this darkness around, this secret around. I was able to expose that to them and they thanked me for trusting them. And I felt like then at that point too, a friendship, because we're parents, but then we start to, as they grow, to develop a friendship with our children as well. And yeah, the fear of them knowing was gone. The fear that I had been carrying around was gone. The shame was gone.
I love that. Thank you for
You're
sharing that. I
welcome.
hope you all caught that, and I hope you all caught all the commonality and linking threads with everybody, because I think you'll find the same is true with all of your clients or with the clients that you serve in general.
Yeah. And so talking about how to prioritize and how we can integrate healing into and make it more of a priority in our centers, I wanted to ask, how have you been able to create a culture that prioritizes healing in your center? And I'm going to start with Trione for this question.
Well, the first way that we prioritize healing in our center is just that we acknowledge us as staff and volunteers as a team that we continually need healing. And so we make it as personal about us first, right? We continually need healing, whether it's an abortion story, whether it's a sexual trauma story, whether it's just a really rough life story. We all have broken pieces. And then until the day we go see Jesus, we're going to continue to work on sanctification and work that out. And so we are continually working on something ourselves. That way we don't get this idea, this haughty thing of, well, I got it all together and I'm fine, and so let me fix you. No, 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 no. There ain't no fixing you. We need to fix us. And then we're able to continually go into that relationship of, I'm broken too. Look what the Lord's healing in me. Look where I'm at. And this is what he's doing me. So we start with that. Then what we do is we go through all of our programs, and Earn While You Learn or Bright Course is a great place to start, because whether you have a mom or dad or grandma who comes in, whether she's parenting that child, whether she used to parent that child, wherever she's at, she come in for diapers, whatever she's coming in for, a new pregnancy test, an ultrasound, whatever, you can start everybody right there. There's something in it that everybody can start at. And so what we usually do is very much like what you showed in your funnel, Amanda, is I didn't know that was your funnel, but that's very much what our process is. And so we have them come in and we start that relationship. Fortunately, our center does not have a parameter of every 3 months contact. We can contact them as much as they will allow. And so we do things a little bit different. We will start that relationship with, hey, do you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee? Hey, do you want to come have some brownies? Hey, let's meet and have a soda. And we will just discuss life of where you are at and be like, oh, we actually have some courses. Maybe you'd like to take those. Maybe you'd be interested. Here are some things I'm hearing you say that we have some courses that might fit. We do online and in person. So we personalize it to that. Is she a person who, or is he a person who is a people person? Then we're going to really encourage that group dynamic. We're going to really encourage that one-on-one type of thing. If it's a person who is like, I just want to be left alone, I only want to see you once in a great while, then we're going to encourage that online piece and then say, meet with us once a month at least. We're going to figure out who they are and encourage what's going to be with them. And then we're going to take them a little bit deeper. We do often start with unraveled roots and help them see that there is even an issue in their life. Help them see, like, is there anything that sticks out to you? Is there anything that tugs at your heart that you go, ooh, is there anything that hurts a little bit? Let's talk about that. And then say, oh, we have another program that you might want to look at. What do you think about that? And then we'll go to the next thing. And then we'll go to the next thing. And then we go to the next thing. If we use Keys to Hope and Healing, after that, we call it an emotional break. After that, then we have a little break. Then we go to the next thing. And then maybe we'll go to Where Do Broken Hearts Heal? Because that's getting in touch with our emotions of our abortion. And then we'll take an emotional break. And then maybe they'll go on to Transforming Your Story, because that's got a lot more Bible in it. And then they'll go on to being invited into Deeper Still and into a retreat model. And so we stair step them like that through relationship. During those emotional break times, we meet with them at least once a month for coffee, for brownies, for whatever, and continue that relationship.
I love that. And what I heard a little bit that was a little different than the funnel was that you start that relationship building outside of Bright Course before you even invite them into that. And I love that you guys have the capacity to be able to do things like that, to go have coffee with them or a soda and just get to know them as a person first. And I think that's wonderful. I love that you guys are able to do that and then lead into the Bright Course. Like you said, thank you so much for sharing that. I know I'm really inspired just hearing how you guys have been able to really integrate it into everything that you do. And I love the idea. We have to start with ourselves first. That was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I also want to point that same question to Marley. How have you helped create a culture that prioritizes healing in your center?
So at Foothills over the past couple of years, it's been really interesting to see how things have changed. If you look at concepts shared on Cool Focus, for us, number one concept shared is prayer. Number two is healing. Number three is parenting. Like, we prioritize evangelizing. We prioritize sharing the good news, but we share the good news through relationship, through building relationship, very much like what has been shared. I think that we're all seeing the value of community and of relationship, of connectivity, and how we can find healing in that space. And so whenever individuals come into the center, they can come into the center for a pregnancy test, ultrasound, diapers, wipes, those things. They go through an intake process. In that intake process, it is identified if they have experienced the loss of a child through abortion. And if that's the case, then we want to connect with them right away. We want to begin to talk to them about the fact that there is that big T word that gets thrown around so much, trauma. That's something that we don't talk about a lot. Whenever we do a Bible study on recovering from abortion experience, we focus on forgiveness, and then we also focus on grief. Those two things are very needed, but we're just beginning making that connection that abortion is trauma, that women experience trauma. We also use Bright Course. So whenever women come in and we identify that they have experienced abortion, then we begin that education and awareness process of bringing that understanding. I have found that with Bright Course, using the video, I believe you were probably referencing, Amanda, understanding trauma. That's our springboard. That's my springboard that I start out with. It's very, very basic information on trauma and understanding that. And then we can go into Keys with Hope and Healing. We use Unraveled Roots as well. That has been extremely helpful. Oftentimes, women will not make that correlation, or men make that correlation between what has happened in their past to what is connecting to their present. So many people talk about our lives are like a car, and the mirror, the windshield is so huge, the rearview mirror is so small. So don't look back, look forward. All that is really good, but if you don't deal with your past is going to deal with you. And we are constantly talking to people about just that subconscious aspect of how there is pain there. And it affects our motivations. It affects how we relate to others, how we see God, how we see ourselves. And as you and I have talked about before, Amanda, we can give parents information. Parenting information is so vital because it doesn't necessarily come natural how to do those things. But if a parent hasn't experienced healing, that's all it is information.
It's wonderful, Marley. I remember when you dropped that bomb on me, you were like, parenting information without healing is just that, information. I was like, oh, that's another Marley quote that I'm stealing. I quote you all the time. I know, Susan, that you have found some interesting ways to incentivize some of your healing and things that you offer that I thought were kind of unique. So if you could just take a minute to share some of those things that you have found helpful for incentivizing.
We have a separate facility called the Parenting Center, where our clients that are going to parent are going to the classes, and we're using Bright Course there. We've just started doing this. We are offering lots more points for those classes than for just the regular parenting classes. And we even get vouchers from Goodwill for things that we donate to them. They give us back vouchers. And so we're giving them like Goodwill vouchers, and they're getting probably twice as many points for going to those classes. And they can use those points to shop there for baby items. So y'all pray for me, because we're starting Unraveled Roots tomorrow. I'm just gonna be honest, I've not done this before in person. And we talked it up big with the clients. We opened it up on Facebook to people that are not clients, and we set a cap. We told clients there were limited spots. We have 15 people signed up right now. I don't know what that's going to look like.
Amazing. Wow.
And we've got some dads that have signed up. So I'm really excited about that. I'm so excited to hear that that's what you're doing at other places. It's working. I'm really hoping that that's just kind of a springboard to lead people to other healing. And by having that time to develop relationships with them, hopefully it will be easier to guide them to other classes that they need.
Definitely, Susan. I think those are great ideas. I'm so excited to hear how your Unraveled Roots group goes. And you can reach out to us for support when you need it. We're here. So that's exciting. So Heidi, do we have any questions from the audience?
So we just had one come up. How do people who are close to the person that had an abortion work in the recovery process?
So say maybe like my wife or like somebody's spouse, somebody was impacted, and then How does their partner, maybe their spouse or a parent or somebody else, work into recovery? I will say, for me, my abortion experiences happened before I met my wife. And for whatever reason, on about our second date, I told her about them. And so we got married. And when I entered abortion healing, she had never experienced abortion loss or anything, but she actually chose to go through Keys to Hope and Healing herself to gain a bit of understanding. We were also in Celebrate Recovery together as leaders for a while too. And that helped with some of the issues. But I think it's going to be just like every client, it's going to be a little bit different. But like my wife decided that going through the Keys to Open Healing would be a benefit to her, and it was. She made a comment to me one day early on in my abortion healing journey, and I'll never forget it. And I've shared it with dozens of men, and that was this. Yeah, you lost two children. I lost two stepchildren. So, I mean, there was an emotional impact for her as well.
So another question, how can we help support our client to see their abortion can affect their parenting if they are denying that it is causing problems?
Boy, that's tough. It's tough to convince anybody what they need to know, right? I think what Amanda talked about in her funnel is a huge key to the answer to that question. It's about building that relationship, because when you build that relationship, you build that trust. And you can start having those conversations with someone that knows, likes, and trusts you. If they have no context, I don't see how you can do it effectively. Amanda, you got anything on that?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is through that relationship building, through talking about some of the issues maybe that they are willing to talk about that they are experiencing, that those things can come up over time. You do need that context of that relationship and that trust built, and talking through some of their other issues may be a really good way to get a door open to them seeing how their abortion might be affecting them. But we have to have that relationship to be able to speak into people's lives.
You can't talk anybody into anything. But if you ask good questions and you help them to identify things that they see, like see the low level anxiety, the low level fear that they're working in their everyday life in, if you help them to see that and they're acknowledging it, then they realize they need help and they'll go forward with a program. But you have to talk with them and ask them questions and then hear what they say. And then go, wow, tell me about how that works out for you. How does this look in your life? Have you considered this? This is how I've seen this go on. And then they go, oh, that's me. And that will help them identify that they need help and they're more willing to sign up for it. You just can't say, here's a class I want you to join because it's a really good idea.
And one of the things I learned from my dad, and this is how I speak to men, this is what worked for me. This is the path I chose, and try to show the example of how it worked.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm so thankful to each of our panelists for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. I learned so much from all of you every day, and I love to be able to share what I learn with other providers that can help. And so thank you guys for being here and sharing that directly today.